Quick Kick Picks presented by Bros Talking Soccer. There it is. Lighting is all kinds of off. My name is Dave Knittel, and I'm flying solo on today's video. Christian and Matt took care of our Premier League Quick Kick Picks, and this Quick Kick Picks is going to be for MLS Match Week 23. All 24 teams are in action. I'm going to run through the 12 matches, and quick reminder, we have a Quick Kick Picks game, so make sure to leave your predictions if you're watching on YouTube. Leave them below in the comment section, or if you're checking this out, or preferably send us a message over on Twitter or tweet at us at BT Soccer Pod and have them over there. If you get the home team's score correct, that is a point. If you get the away team's score correct, that is a point. If you get the result of the match correct, that is a point for you. If you get all three of those correct, you get a bonus. 2 points, 5 points are up for grabs with every game that we play. So when there's 12 matches, 60 points are up for grabs this weekend. The highest score at the end of the month of August will get to come on our podcast for a 15-minute guest appearance. It is super easy to make up ground. So even though we're about halfway through the month, or actually only a quarter of the way through the month, you can still play if you haven't played before. And if you have played before, obviously keep those predictions coming. Real quick, we restrict ourselves to about 2 minutes per game when we're discussing the games here. That's because Twitter restricts us to about 2 minutes and 20 seconds. I have a timer here. Since it's just me today, I don't envision this whistle going off, but if you hear a whistle, that means we have reached the end of that particular game and we have to move on. I think that's it. I think we're ready to get going and start talking about the game. So kicking things off, and also I am back home in my childhood bedroom. I'm traveling, so I do not have my fancy graphics, those signs that I hold up. So apologies for that. And so I'm just going to have to be all voice today. So with that, let's get into the games. Kicking things off on Saturday, August 10th, we have the Seattle Sounders hosting the New England Revolution at 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Now, Seattle has had 2 straight home losses after being undefeated at home before those 2 matches. Now, they're still top 5 in MLS in home points per game, so they're still a very strong side at home. And over their last 10 matches, they have 4 wins and 6 losses. So no draws in there. And it's not the greatest run of form for a team that I consider to probably be second in the Western Conference. And now second place is wide open outside of, obviously, LAFC is running away with things. Roman Torres has been suspended for drug testing for performance-enhancing drugs. So he's going to be a big miss. And I don't know if Raul Ruidiaz is going to be there in this one. He's a huge loss for them as well. I think he is one of the most underrated forwards in MLS. So those 2 might be huge losses for them in this game. New England, meanwhile, their last match, they lost to LAFC at home, but that was their first loss since May 8th. They've been in a fantastic run of form. That was the first time that they were shut out since May as well, May 18th. So they've been getting a lot of goals over their most recent run. Over their last 5 road games, they have 3 wins and 2 draws. So they haven't lost, obviously, in their last 5 road games. And only one of those matches, though, however, was against a team in the top 10 in home points per game in the season. So a lot of those matches on the road weren't exactly against strong opposition, whereas Seattle is a very strong opponent. My homemade expected goals model, my Knittel expected goals, or KXG, has this one 1.64 to 1.29 in favor of Seattle. Ultimately, I think that sounds about right. It's going to be tight. It's going to be close, but I have Seattle prevailing in a 2-1 home victory there. So look out for that. And now I'm going to try to multitask here. There we go. All right. Next game we are talking about. We have the Columbus Crew taking on FC Cincinnati at 7:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time in the Hell is Real Derby, or the Battle for Ohio, whatever you want to call it. These 2 teams have not been great, but when they've played in the Open Cup, it seems to be a budding rivalry, even though there isn't much history here. And so I'm really curious to see how all of that plays out. Now, Columbus is unbeaten in their last 4. They have 2 wins and 2 draws. They have 8 goals scored over their last 4 matches, and that has pulled them out of being dead last in the league in attack to being tied for dead last in the league. They're only scoring 1 goal per game on the season. They're averaging barely over 3 shots on target per match. That's the lowest in the league. They're not a great home side, but they did win 2-1 over Montreal at home 2 weeks ago. Then they went to San Jose and got a draw. So those are 2 pretty good results. I think the tide is turning for this club, but I just don't see them really getting back into the Eastern Conference playoff race here. Now, FC Cincinnati, they had a nice blip in form in early July. They picked up 2 wins, but They've fallen back into that form that they were in right before that. They have 4 straight losses. They've scored 3 and conceded 10 over that span. Over their last 10 road matches, they have 8 goals scored and 29 conceded. Again, not great numbers. They only have 1 win and 9 losses in those 10 road matches. I expect it to be good atmosphere here, but both sides are likely to miss the playoffs. So I'm really curious to see how that really impacts the fans and the atmosphere in this one. It would have been cool if both were really in playoff contention. Unfortunately, we're not going to see that here. Also, FC Cincinnati, they haven't drawn a match since April 7th. That's just a little fun fact for you. Hope you enjoyed that. They did pick up Derek Etienne on loan, and they signed Joe Zhao from Duisburg, I believe is how you pronounce it, in Germany, and they appointed a new coach, but I don't think that's enough for them to get a result here. My homemade expected goals model, my KXG, has this one 1.37 to 1.05, so on the lower end of the scoring spectrum, I expect Columbus to get a 2-0 home victory here. Next match we are talking about, or I am talking about, hopefully you are enjoying this, is Toronto FC is hosting Orlando City at 7:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on Saturday, August 10th. Now, Toronto, they won in their Canadian Championship match midweek at Ottawa, and they had a pretty heavily rotated lineup, so I don't think there's going to be a lot of fatigue factor from that match. Since the Gold Cup break, though, Toronto, which was on June 22nd is when they came back, Toronto has 4 wins, 1 draw, and 4 losses in MLS play. For a team as talented as they are, I would expect that to be much better, and so it's still surprising to see Toronto hovering right around the playoff line and kind of on the wrong side of that. They look to have a little bit of momentum in mid-July, but then they lost at home to a struggling Houston Dynamo side who is not very good on the road. They bounced back and they beat FC Cincinnati 2-1 at home, but they weren't really impressive in that match. And unfortunately, only beating Cincinnati 2-1 is not going to be a great result. Most recently, they lost on the road at the New York Red Bulls 2-0. They're scoring more than 2 goals per game at home, but they're conceding 1.7 in those games. The defense is just not being good enough. Josie has really turned it on, and he scored in 4 straight MLS appearances before that shutout at the Red Bull, so he's been really lighting things up. Now, on the Orlando side of things, they have struggled for form all season. They don't have back-to-back wins in MLS play all year. Their most recent MLS match was a 2-0 home victory at FC Dallas, so they would need to break that trend to get a win here. I don't see that happening. They did lose midweek in the Open Cup on Tuesday, and they played a relatively full-strength lineup to Atlanta. And so for that reason, again, I'm favoring TFC in this one. They're scoring 1.1 they have 1.1 points per game on the road with a -1 goal difference. They're not terrible on the road, but they haven't exactly been great. Now, outside of a 4-1 loss to New England on July 27th, every single one of their road matches were either victories, draws, or 1-goal defeats. So they do keep matches close, although they aren't the greatest. My homemade expected goals model has this one 1.7 to 1 in favor of Toronto. I think TFC has the talent advantage. I wanted to predict 2-1, but I actually see this one ending up a little bit more high scoring, 3-2 to Toronto. Next match we are talking about, we have FC Dallas hosting Minnesota United at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on Saturday, August 10th. Now, Dallas, here's a weird stat for you. Over their last 6 MLS matches, they've involved a clean sheet in one way or another. They have 2 wins, a draw, and 3 losses over that time. Also, their last 4 victories across all competitions, Dallas has kept a clean sheet. What that means is that if Dallas concedes, especially if they go behind early, that's not an encouraging sign if I'm an FC Dallas fan. Their last non-clean sheet victory was on June 1st versus Seattle. They are a pretty good home side. They're picking up 1.9 points per game at home, but they're only scoring 1.5 goals per game. So they're not scoring a ton. However, they are conceding only 0.8 goals per game. That's 3rd best defense at home in the entire league. Minnesota, meanwhile, they won midweek in the Open Cup over Portland at Allianz Field, so at home. They haven't lost across all competitions since June 8th. They're in a great run of form. They have 9 wins and 2 draws over that span. They're only shut out in that stretch. Only shut out once in that stretch. That's what it is. Yeah, can't read my notes sometimes. So they were only shut out once. So they're scoring a bunch. They're averaging 2.8 goals per game over this run, and they're only conceding 0.9. So they're averaging almost a 2-goal victory in that one. Mason Toye has been fantastic for them off the bench most recently, and Rodriguez and Quintero, their other 2 forwards, have been really clicking after starting the year. It seemed like they weren't really playing well off of each other. They seem to have things figured out. My KXG, my homemade expected goals model, Knittel expected goals, has this one 1.4 to 1.16 in favor of FC Dallas. I expect that to be a relatively low scoring draw. Minnesota has been in fine form. Dallas doesn't give up a ton of goals at home. And so for that reason, I have this one ultimately ending up as a 1-1 draw. Next match we are talking about, we have Sporting Kansas City hosting Real Salt Lake at 8:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on Saturday. SKC has 4 wins, 2 draws, and 4 losses over their last 10 matches. Relatively mediocre form is what I'll call that. They lost 2 before winning at Seattle last weekend, which definitely was a surprise because Seattle, up until the last few weeks, was fantastic at home, and they seem to have sputtered a little bit. And so that's a really good result for SKC. They do, however, have a negative goal difference at home, which is really surprising for Peter Vermeer's side. They're conceding 2 goals per game on average at home. That is not something that I would have expected, again, from a Peter Vermeer's side. Over their last 5 home matches, they've conceded 2, 2, 5. They did have 1 clean sheet and then 2 again. So again, they're just conceding a lot of goals, and especially over the most recent run of form. The 1 clean sheet seems like an outlier from an SKC perspective, and I just haven't had a ton of confidence in their forward play this year. Now, RSL, they only have 1 league loss over their last 8 matches. Since June 1st, when they had a 4-0 road loss to the Red Bulls, they haven't conceded more than a goal on the road in their 3 matches. They're not really scoring on the road, however, and they're only averaging 0.9 goals per game all season on the road. They did score 3 at home versus New York City FC in their most recent match, and they came from behind to do that. That's a very encouraging sign from an RSL perspective. I've been really enjoying Jefferson Savarino's play for them, and hopefully they can hold on to him throughout the transfer window. This does have a bit of a rivalry twinge to this game. I don't know if twinge was the right word, but it has a bit of a rivalry element to this game dating back to the MLS Cup that these 2 teams played on. My KXG, so that's something that may factor into this game. My KXG, homemade expected goals, has this one 1.6 to 1.1 in favor of Sporting Kansas City. Now, I really like what RSL has been doing, and I haven't had a ton of confidence in SKC, and that is why I'm predicting a 2-2 draw in this one. Next match we are talking about, we have the Chicago Fire hosting the Montreal Impact at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on Saturday. Chicago, they won 1-0 at Houston. That was their first win in 6 matches across all competitions, and I believe their first road victory all season. They have 2 straight clean sheets, and that's an encouraging sign for a side that has attacking talent, but I haven't had a lot of confidence in their defense. So the fact that they're coming off of 2 clean sheets, I got to be happy if I'm a Fire fan. They're a pretty good home side. They score 2 goals per game, and they're conceding barely more than 1 goal per game. Those are pretty good numbers for a home side, but they haven't won at home since July 1st, so it's been more than a month. Montreal, they've been very active in the transfer window. They brought back Balou Tabla from Barcelona on loan. They signed Bojan Krkic. I don't know if they're going to be integrated in the side or how quickly they will be integrated. I would probably lean toward Tabla, who has been with Impact before, being integrated before Krkic, but that's great pronunciation. But we'll see on that front. They've done well in the Canadian Championship, and they played midweek in that competition, winning at home. Outside of a 4-0 home thumping to the Philadelphia Union 2 weeks ago, though, Montreal hasn't won in MLS since June 26th. That's 5 losses, and then that 1 win over Philly in that span. That isn't a great run of form. They've given up 31 goals on the road in 14 matches. That's 2.2 goals per game that they are conceding. Only FC Cincinnati is worse. You never want to kind of be in the same breath with Cincinnati the way that this season has gone. So that's a discouraging sign from a Montreal perspective. My homemade expected goals model has this one 1.55 to 1.04 in favor of the Chicago Fire. I'm going to up that even more and say the Chicago Fire get a 3rd goal, and this one ends up 3-1 in favor of Chicago. Next match we are talking about, we have the Colorado Rapids hosting the San Jose Earthquakes at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on Saturday. These 2 teams met 2 weeks ago, and San Jose won 3-1 at home. Colorado, they're coming off of a 6-3 home victory over Montreal in their last match. That was their first win in 4 MLS matches. They had 3 losses and a draw over those 4 preceding matches. I feel like I say it every week, but it continues to impress me that Colorado, they're towards the bottom of the table across MLS, but they haven't been shut out at home all season, and they've only been shut out twice all season. Both of them came on the road, and they haven't been shut out since April 27th. That's 15 matches across all competitions where they haven't been shut out. They're going to get goals, but can they really stop the San Jose Earthquakes from getting goals? I don't think so. Colorado has the second worst defense in the league. They're conceding 2.1 goals per game. San Jose, meanwhile, they have the highest number of shots of any road team in the league. They're going to be taking a lot of shots on the road. They're scoring 1.5 goals per game on the road, but they are also conceding 1.8. So again, they're conceding a lot of goals on the road. Weird stat for you. Over their last 4 road matches for the Quakes across all competitions, they've all ended with 3-1 scorelines. San Jose has 2 wins and 2 losses in that. Their most recent 2 road matches were 3-1 wins. So that's an encouraging sign from a San Jose perspective. Seem to really have figured out Matias Almeida's system. And again, that's an encouraging sign. They're tied for second in the Western Conference. Nobody expected that coming into the season. So it's been very impressive from the Quakes. My home and expected goals model has this one 1.5 to 1.61 in favor of the San Jose Earthquakes. My homemade expected goals model almost never favors road teams. So this one is interesting. It's going to be, I believe, really high scoring. I expect it to be wide open, lots of goals. Ultimately, I think Colorado has enough to hold on for a 3-3 draw, but I expect lots of goals here, and this one ends up 3-3. Next match we are talking about, we have the Portland Timbers hosting the Vancouver Whitecaps at 11 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on Saturday, and this is a Cascadia rivalry match. So rivalry always adds an interesting element into these matches because these two teams are in very different runs of form. Portland, they lost midweek in the Open Cup at Minnesota, but they played a relatively strong lineup in that one. They do have 2 straight 1-goal losses to Minnesota, but both of those came on the road. They haven't lost, however, at Providence Park, which is where this match is going to be played, since June 1st, and that was against LAFC, which there's not a lot of shame in losing to LAFC, and that's their only home loss all season for Portland. They've only played 6 matches, but still, they only have 1 home loss. They're scoring 2.3 goals per game at home, and they're only conceding 1. So those are really good numbers. If I am a Timbers fan, I am excited about that. From a Vancouver perspective, they have won their last 3 matches against the Timbers, but they are tied for the worst attack in the league. They're only scoring 1 goal per game. The offense is slightly better on the road than at home, but the defense is much worse for the Whitecaps. They won their most recent road match 2-1, and they drew the match prior to that 0-0. So they do have a nice little run going where they haven't lost in 2 matches, but before that they had lost 5 straight across all their MLS matches, and they were winless in their 9 matches before picking up that draw. They're bottom of the West on points per game, and they're the second worst points per game in the league. I just don't have confidence in this Vancouver Whitecaps team. My home and expected goals model does not have confidence in the Whitecaps team either. Knittel expected goals has this one 2.16 to 1.04. It's the biggest differential of my model of any match this weekend. I have Portland coming out of this one with a 3-0 home victory, and I wouldn't be shocked if it is even bigger scoreline than that. Moving to Sunday, August 11th, we have Atlanta United taking on New York City FC at 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Now, Atlanta, they won on Tuesday in the Open Cup at Orlando. Over their last 5 matches across all competitions, they have 4 wins and 1 loss, and their only 1 loss was at LAFC, where they had a meltdown for 9 minutes. They conceded 4 goals. Over the rest of that game, they played relatively well, and they fought back to make it a 4-3 victory or 4-3 loss. But again, it was an impressive sort of fight back from Atlanta, and there's no shame in losing to LAFC, especially on the road where LAFC has only drawn 1 match. They've won all the rest of them. Joseph has scored in 9 straight MLS appearances. That is pretty good. He has 18 goals all on the season, and he left for the Copa America. It's just a very impressive tally from him. Barco, Pitti, and Joseph started together in their last match, which was a 3-0 home victory over LA Galaxy. That was the first time in months that has happened. That's an encouraging sign from an Atlanta perspective. Atlanta has 9 wins, 3 draws, and only 1 loss at home all season. They have a plus 19 goal difference. They're averaging 2.3 points per game at home. That's second best in the league. They are a very good home side. Now, NYCFC, they fought back for a dramatic win on Thursday over Houston. They had a bit of lineup rotation, were able to get away with the win. And also, they have 2 less days rest to turn around and play in that. So fatigue might play a role here. Over their last 5 MLS matches, NYCFC has 3 wins and 2 losses. They have no clean sheets since July 3rd versus Seattle, and that came at home. They have 1.5 points per game on the road, which is a pretty good road side, and they have a 0 goal difference on the road, which again isn't terrible. It's not fantastic, but it's not terrible to be relatively even on the road. So they're pretty good roadside. I already touched on it before. I don't love that NYCFC has 2 less days rest, and they're playing on the road. So I need to give the edge to Atlanta in this one, but I expect it to be close. My home expected goals model has this one 1.42 to 1.04 in favor of Atlanta United. The model is predicting more low scoring. I'm going to go the other way. I'm going to ignore that and say this one ultimately ends up 3-2 to Atlanta. They win this one. It is my match of the weekend, though. So you definitely want to tune in to watch this game. Next match we are talking about, we have the Philadelphia Union hosting the Houston Dynamo at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Very excited. I will actually be at this one in person. Don't get to see my Union living in California very often, so I'm excited to be back east and tuning in for this one live in person. Philly will have a full-strength lineup for the first time in what feels like a while. Montero is back to, I believe, full strength. I wouldn't be shocked if he starts in this one. Ilsinho is also back, and so it'll be good to have him most likely off the bench, but he's a dangerous weapon. Wooten looked very impressive with his hold-up play in his starting debut against DC United, and Wagner, the left back, has been so important to the Union this season. Philly is picking up 2 points per game at home, and they're scoring 2.2 goals per game at home. They're a very good home side. Now, Houston, they played midweek. They took the lead in New York City FC, even going down a man, but they weren't able to hold on. They did acquire Christian Ramirez as a striker over the transfer window, and so that was an interesting signing because I think that they're relatively talented in attack, and unless they're changing up their formation or Manotas is moving on, that was an interesting kind of signing for them. Houston has been terrible on the road all year. They have 2 wins, no draws, and 9 losses. They're one of the worst teams in the league on the road. They had the lead. I already touched on that one, but blew it with a late 93rd minute goal conceded to NYCFC. Romel Kyoto, he picked up a first half red, so in all likelihood, he will be suspended for this one. That's a big loss for Houston. My home expected goals model has this one 1.83 to 0.98. It's one of the biggest differentials in my model all weekend, so it's heavily favoring the Philadelphia Union. This has all the makings of a trap game for Philly, but I think that this side is able to take care of business and win this one convincingly 3-0 to the Philadelphia Union. This is slightly bold because Philly only has 1 clean sheet since May 18th, and that came against a struggling, disinterested Chicago Fire side. They're only marginally better than Houston. Having said that, I do think Philly is able to keep a clean sheet, and this one ends up 3-0. Next match we are talking about, second to last one here, we have DC United hosting the LA Galaxy at 7:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on Sunday, August 11th, I think. Yeah, on August 11th. DC they don't look right now. Over their last 8 competitive matches since the Gold Cup break, they have 2 wins, 3 draws, and 3 losses. Their most recent loss was to the Philadelphia Union with a 5-1 home loss to the Union. Philly benefited from a first half red card to Moreno and Chris Durkin getting hurt, but Philly was in control well before then. That's not a good sign from a DC perspective. They're really struggling dealing with injuries to center midfielders. The whole Rooney situation with him transferring, I don't know how that's going to play out and affect him as well as the rest of the team with him leaving in January. Costa has not looked right all season. He was in great form when Rooney came last summer, but he hasn't looked right this season, and that's not great from a DC perspective. DC only has a +1 goal difference at home, so again, not great. LA Galaxy, they're coming off of a 3-0 loss at Atlanta, but Zlatan wasn't there, and Zlatan is so important to that side. That is great to have him back if I'm a Galaxy fan. Now, they did make some roster moves over the transfer window with it closing. They traded Emma Boateng, and then they signed Christian Pavon. I don't know if he's going to make an immediate impact. I would be surprised if he plays in this one or plays very much. He does have a relationship with Baros Schelotto, the LA Galaxy manager, so I guess I wouldn't be shocked if he gets some time in this one, but it'll be interesting to see how his signing plays out more in the long term. I don't know if he's really going to make an impact here. LA is average on the road. They're only got 1.2 points per game that they're picking up, but their last 3 road matches ended 3-0, 4-0, and 3-0, all of those being losses. So that's not a great run of form for LA on the road. My home expected goals model has this one 1.46 to 1.46. And so this is dead even based on my model. I think Rooney bounces back, but I think Zlatan will rise to the occasion. And this ends up as a draw, and I'm going to predict a 2-2 draw here. Last match of the weekend, and probably the second best match of the entire MLS slate this weekend. We have the LAFC. We have LAFC hosting the New York Red Bulls at 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. LAFC, I don't really know what else you can really say about this side. They're running away with the Supporters' Shield. They're on pace to break tons of records and points per game. They're going to break so many offensive records. It's being crazy. If you want to get nitpicky, which, hey, why don't we do that? Because everybody's already said so much about them. You could have started to worry that they hadn't kept a clean sheet in 8 matches across all competitions, but they kind of rectified that with a 2-0 road victory over a red-hot New England. So, again, not really much to really fault them for. They're returning home now where they have 9 wins and 1 draw. No losses in all their home matches, in their 10 home matches. They're scoring 3 goals per game and only conceding 1. Those are pretty good numbers. Those are record-setting numbers, picking up 2.8 points per game at home. It's crazy. They have the most shots on target per game in the league, most big chances created. Vela is leading the league in goals scored. He's tied for the league in assists, and really they don't have very many weaknesses outside of one thing we did see from the Galaxy a couple weeks ago is when they got very physical with LAFC, they sort of shrunk a little bit. And so that's something that the Red Bulls can look to do. They are a physical side, and that's an area that they can look to exploit. Red Bull New York, they haven't won back-to-back matches since May 25th and June 1st. They won 1-0 on the road in Orlando in their most recent road match, but they're only averaging 1.1 points per game on the road, and they have a -4 goal difference. Not really great numbers. Aaron Long, his whole transfer saga, I wonder how that's going to impact his play as well as if it affects any of the rest of the team. He is so important to them, and his mind seems to be drawn over to Europe. So it'll be interesting to see how that happens. Red Bulls are a good team, but they're somewhat inconsistent, and it's really tough for me to pick against LAFC. Again, I already touched on the physicality that Red Bull can look to do and sort of knock LAFC off their game. I don't see it happening, though. My KXG, homemade expected goals model, has this one 1.98 to 0.96 in favor of LAFC. I expect LAFC to absolutely roll in this one, finish 4-1 in favor of LAFC. That has been your Quick Kick Picks video for MLS Match Week 23. Make sure to send us your predictions at BT Soccer Pod, or you can leave it as a comment below the video. My name is Dave. I will be back sometime next week for our next videos. I think they're midweek MLS matches, so look for my next video probably on Tuesday. This has been Quick Kick Picks presented by Bros Talking Soccer. There it is. Have a great rest of your week. Go enjoy some MLS action, and we'll talk to you soon. See you, everybody.